Expressionism. Much music of the 20th century reflects an artistic movement called Expressionism, which stressed intense subjective emotion. It was largely centered in Germany and Austria from 1905 to 1925. Expressionist painters, writers, and composers explored inner feelings rather than depicting outward appearances. They used deliberate distortion to assault and shock their audience, to communicate the tensions and anguish of the human psyche. Expressionism grew out of the same intellectual climate as Freud's studies in hysteria and unconsciousness. German Expressionist paintings was in part a reaction against the pleasant subjects, delicate pastel colors, and shimmering surfaces of French Impressionism. The Expressionists rejected conventional pettiness. Their works seem ugly in their preoccupation with madness and death. Expressionist painters often use jarring colors and grotesquely distorted shapes. Expressionist art tends to be fragmentary. The scenes of an expressionist play may be episodic or discontinuous. Expressionism is also an art concerned with social protest. It movingly conveys the anguish felt by the poor and oppressed. Many expressionists opposed World War I and used art to depict the horror and bloodshed. Arnold Schoenberg, 1874 to 1951, who was born in Vienna, was almost entirely a self-taught musician. He acquired a profound knowledge of music by studying scores, playing in amateur groups, and going to concerts. When he lost his job as a bank clerk at the age of 21, he devoted himself to music, earning a poor living conducting a choir of industrial workers and orchestrating popular operettas. Performances of his own works met with hostility from the conservative Viennese public. In 1904, Schoenberg began to teach music theory and composition in Vienna, and he inspired love and loyalty in his students, two of whom, Alban Berg and Antoine Webern, themselves became leading composers. Around 1908, Schoenberg took a revolutionary step of abandoning the traditional tonal system. His productivity between 1908 and 1915 was incredible, but after that, the next 8 years, he searched for a way to organize his musical discoveries and published nothing. From 1923 to 1925, Schoenberg published compositions using his new 12-tone system. Though his music did not find a large audience, many important musicians respected it. At the age of 51, he received an appointment at the Prussian Academy of Arts in Berlin. After the Nazis seized power in Germany, Schoenberg, who was Jewish, was dismissed from the post. The same year, 1933, his family came to the United States, where he joined the music faculty at the University of California in Los Angeles, UCLA. Schoenberg felt neglected in America. His music was rarely performed, and he was financially unsuccessful. But after his death, the 12-tone system was used increasingly by composers throughout the world. It remains an important influence to this day. Schoenberg's music. His early works, such as the string sextet, Transfigured Night, show many features of late Romantic style. Some of them use very large orchestras, dissonances, and angular melodies, creating a feeling of subjectivity. Chromatic harmony is predominant, and the central tonality is weakened as the music moves through remote keys. But from 1903 to 1907, he departed further from Romanticism. Atonality. Around 1908, Schoenberg began to write atonal music. Atonality is the absence of key, evolved from his earlier use of chromatic harmony and chromatic scales. Schoenberg's atonal compositions include 5 pieces for orchestra and Pierre Lunaire, which is Moonstruck Parrot. They are characterized by jagged melodies, novel instrumental effects, extreme contrast of dynamics and register, and irregular phrases. Moonstruck Parrot and other works by Schoenberg call for an unusual style of vocal performance. It's called Speechstimme, literally speech voice, halfway between speaking and halfway between singing. The 12-tone system in the early 1920s, Schoenberg developed a more systematic method of organizing atonal music. He called it method of composing with 12 tones. He partly applied the new technique in 5 piano pieces and Serenade Opus 24, then fully elaborated in his Suite for Piano Opus 25. The 12-tone system is a 20th century alternative to tonality, a new way of organizing pitch and composition. It is a systemized form of atonality that gives equal importance to each of the 12 chromatic tones. In a 12-tone composition, the ordering or unifying idea is called a tone row, or a set, or a series. No pitch occurs more than once in a row. This prevents any one tone from receiving too much emphasis. So we're going to listen to Moonstruck Parrot. Like Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring, composed around the same time as Schoenberg's Moonstruck Parrot, it is a revolutionary masterpiece that profoundly influenced 20th century music. It is a cycle of 21 songs for female voice and an ensemble of 5 musicians who play 8 instruments. Moonstruck Parrot is based on weird poems written in 1884 by a Belgian poet, Albert Galliard, and later translated into German by Schoenberg's friend. Many of the poems deal with the puppet parrot, a tragic clown character derived from centuries-old commedia dell'arte, or Italian improvised theater. Parrot, who represents the isolated modern artist, was a favorite subject of artists, writers, and musicians in the late 19th century and early 20th century. Moonstrucken, which means moon drunk, scored for voice, piano, flute, violin, cello, begins with a fantastic nocturnal journey. The text depicts moonlight as a sacramental wine we drink through our eyes. The poet, which is the parrot, becomes intoxicated as the moonlight floods the still horizon with desires that are horrible and sweet. Like the other poems in Pierre Lunaire, Moonstrucken is in rondo, verse form. So rondo is, if you remember, you have something and then you have something else, then you have a return. Rondo means return. And it plays that first thing again. It's probably a little bit different, but you get the idea of it. Then it keeps going back and forth. Listen for the vocalist Speechstimme and the technique of half speaking and half singing developed by Schoenberg. Notice the 8-tonal musical language and the depiction of moonlight by the pervasive 7-note motive played by the piano and the flute in a high register.